Keith, and yes, it was my birthday last week, and so it was great. Not that you needed to know, but us Virgos like accurate information. So it was wonderful. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful for this band that is just beyond, amazing. Thank you, ladies, Ryan, David, Jesse, and Tyler, and off the charts. Welcome to those of you who are watching this online, and welcome to those of you who are streaming from Facebook somewhere. And good morning, and welcome to some of our newcomers here. As I welcome you to Soul Center, part of the human experience, the journey of spiritual evolution into enlightenment, of which we're all on. There's nobody not on the path of spiritual enlightenment. There's not one person. There are people who don't know that they're on this path of spiritual enlightenment, but everybody is on the path of spiritual enlightenment. There's many different ways. There are multitudes of ways to move into your divine right beingness as a spiritual master. There are so many different ways. And we celebrate all of those here at Soul Center. We celebrate the golden thread that runs through all of the religions, all of the sacred teachings of truth, whether it's Judaism, as we just celebrated Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, for anybody who may have been celebrating that Happy New Year. In the Jewish tradition, as we celebrate all of the holidays in Christianity and Islam, in shamanism, in Buddhism, and Hinduism, because there is that golden thread of truth in the mystical space that transcends the world of effects of religious dogmas and moves into a place where all of the masters, where Mohammed and Buddha and Jesus and Moses are all just having a grand old time celebrating that and knowing, sitting there going, gosh, they certainly get tripped up on some of those rules and regulations down there, don't they? But it is all good, and we focus on the absolute. In our teachings in the New Thought tradition, it is the absolute truth that we are seeking. It is the truth individually, it is the truth collectively of good beyond our wildest dreams. That is the very nature of who we are and what we teach, and we draw from all of the truth teachings, from the modern day masters to the ancient ones as well. Truth is truth. There is absolute truth. This is capital T truth. This isn't the lowercase t truth, where you sometimes hear people say, well, my truth is this, which just means I'm having a very limited understanding about something, and I am wanting to cling on to that instead of expanding into a greater glory of the absolute truth, because the absolute truth that sets us free is bliss. And bliss is what we're into. As most of you know, as we're getting ready we still have one more week, but we are getting ready to close out the month. Our top theme of the month is labor versus love. And we know that in our community, there really is no versus. There's nothing against anything, except for that we can look at something. We can just kind of look at labor and love, and what are the differences, and what are the similarities. And the topic today is to be bold and behold your joy, because joy is the very nature of life. Joy is the byproduct of living from the impulse within our beingness, is seeking to express itself. It's seeking to express itself. Each one of us has gifts and talents and creative abilities that want to express into this world, and when they are done so, uninhibited and unobstructed by anything, then joy is the byproduct. It is the very nature of life for us to be in joy, to be in peace, to be in the eternal energies. There are eternal energies: peace, love, beauty, joy, grace, truth. Those are eternal. They never get harmed or damaged in any way, shape, or form. They can be misinterpreted and misunderstood when you take them out of context in certain teachings, but they are eternal and they do not get muted in any way. There are transitory energies of fear that show up as anger and resentment and bitterness and misunderstanding and shame and guilt. Those types of energies are transitory and they are illusionary. And sometimes it's often hard to digest that something like that can be illusionary when you're caught in the throes of them. When you just get so upset about something and you can't imagine that it's illusionary because you're feeling it. And that's the difference between lowercase t truth, which is that my feelings, I'm feeling hurt or ashamed or embarrassed or guilty or something like that. That's a transitory energy that we want to learn how to master and rise above and move into the eternal energies that allow you to be so filled with strength. In the Bhagavad Gita it says, established in self-realization, one is not moved even by the greatest calamity. So when we are moving on this pathway of spiritual evolution, even in the biggest thing comes into our life, that could show up as a health challenge, that could show up as something that has to do with financial instability, that could show up as something that is in a relationship that seems to be crumbling apart, or in career or something like that. This is where our spiritual mastery comes into play. This is when we have to choose. We have to choose, and what I would like to put forward is that I want to choose for anything that should come our way. In our teachings, we are choosing to be deliberately moving into a field of allowing ourselves to seek and find the truth and the good in every situation. So I'm going to just put it forward in a bold way that we want to find the good as an adventure, to allow everything to be an adventure, to seek and find good in everything. So sometimes people come up to me, and sometimes I had a friend, or a client actually, who was kind of dealt a triple whammy. It first started out that she lost a job, and so she was going through some trials and tribulations of all of that. And then a relationship that she had been in for many years was falling apart, and she was going through the trials and tribulations of that. And then she was diagnosed with cancer, and the financial thing, the career, and the relationship, it didn't really garner enough energy to want to go within and do the work. But the disease, it brought something where it galvanized, because you kind of don't have a choice. You gotta do something about that. And so it made her look inside. And it's a pretty challenging thing when you feel so much. I mean, your heart just goes out with compassion when you feel like you've lost money, like nothing worse than going through a physical challenge and feeling like you don't have enough money to take care of it. So she was in financial straits. She was in, again, a relationship that had crumbled apart. So this was like a trifecta of not good. But it was the disease that brought her to her knees and said, I gotta do something about this. And so, when in our community, we have spiritual practitioners that are trained to be counselors and to help people to grow through these things. And one of those things would be, it's like, okay, we meet you where you're at. It's like, okay, there are certain feelings that we have about these things when they're happening. Sometimes you just want to punch someone in the face. I remember when I was going through some of my own very arduous, painful experiences in my life, and then you'd hear somebody going oh my God, all this good is happening to me. Oh my God, I was practicing the principles, and then, oh my God, I just got a $10,000 check out of nowhere, and I was like, I just want to punch you in the face. And it's like, when you're in that field where you don't feel so good, and you feel that life is just slipping you by and dealing you a raw deck, and then somebody comes along, and oh, look at me, I'm doing so good. And it's like, okay, I get it, but that's not the truth. It's not the truth when you want to punch someone in the face. It just means, what it means is, from an adventure standpoint, is I've been denying my good to myself, and I ought to get indignant, and I ought to channel that energy into a place where I come to the beginning. Here, that's what we do. We come to the beginning. In the beginning is the Word, in the beginning is the truth, in the beginning is light, in the beginning is God, and we turn to God. And when diagnosed with cancer, and then it really brought her to her knees, and she said, okay, I'm ready now to come to the beginning, because those other things weren't enough to garner that attention. And so we want to just become aware, and oftentimes, as Reverend Michael says from time to time, with regards to living a life of mediocrity, which is where we settle for certain things that just aren't so good. They aren't the full, vibrant expression of beauty and joy and love. You'll know when it's true, and you've heard me say before the difference between happiness which is predicated on the material world. If this is, then I'll be happy. If you're kind to me, I'll be happy. But if you're not, I'm going to be pissed off. And it's like, but joy is like it says in the Bhagavad Gita in scripture, where it's like, even in the face of the mightiest of calamities, you will be unmoved. You will stay in your joy. You will stay in that place. Joy, peace, love, grace, compassion, and understanding. We want to be there. It is our nature. Oftentimes we see that come out when there's a big calamity that comes along, like a hurricane or an earthquake or something like that. And then we muster up some energy to kind of be there for people. But imagine being in that space 24 hours a day. And so, as it was saying in the reading, there are our life structures. There are structures that undergird us, that many of us allow to move into a malaise of mediocrity. The main structures in life are well-being and wellness, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Wellness in life is it's a life structure. When you're physically, emotionally, and mentally feeling good, that's a great place to go out. When you're feeling like that, you're not going to, when somebody comes over and says, I just got 10,000 and this happened and these opportunities and whatever, you're going to be like, yes, oh my God, let's hug it out. And it's like, that's what you want to do, not like I did. And so when you're financially sound, when all needs are met financially, when you are truly tapped into infinite supply. Now there's many of us that are incrementally tapped in. We're tapped in at a level where like, yeah, my needs are met, but they're not all needs met, which means that as is stated in all of the sacred texts, that there is an infinite supply of all good available to everyone. And there's also some other misinterpretations. Might as well just clean up while we're here. Clean up this misinterpretation because, as I studied all the religions through ministerial school, and you hear sometimes like in the Jewish tradition, people will say the chosen people. The chosen people are those that allow their lives to be lived by what Scripture in its mystical teachings is talking about. And when they talk about Jews versus Gentiles, the way that was interpreted way back then was more about heathens, and heathens were those people that wanted nothing to do with God. They wanted nothing to do with good. They just wanted to go out there and act crazy. But if you are to surrender into that, the chosen people is everyone. And any true good mystical person who studied that would know that what the true meanings of that are, and the true meanings of anything, whether it's through Christianity and the master teachings from Yeshua, or from any of the other sacred texts. We want to tap into that. And so this client of mine, we had to get to a place where it's like, okay, there are stages. Sometimes you just got to vent. You got to vent, but you got to make sure when you vent that the intention is, I'm giving this to God. I am not venting to get on a place where I'm going to regurgitate over and over and over, because we don't want to regurgitate everything. We want to release it and to relinquish it. We literally want to say the words, God, I give this to you. I am giving you my burdens. I give them to you that I may be set free. And I will, when you do that, you're going to open the door to the adventure. And the adventure is going to be finding the truth, the absolute truth. And when you get the truth, you will be moved. You will be moved and you will be brought to a place of joy and awe. And so sometimes we have to gauge. And this client I was working with, it was really hard. She was kind of at a real low point in her life. And people coming at her with all kinds of, advice. Be careful the advice, because you're going, oh, well, you got to do this diet, you got to do that, you got to do all this erroneous information coming from so many different angles. It can kind of be a little bit mind-boggling. And it's like, that's why we come to the center. That's why we come to God. That's why we get deliberate. And we have to be cognizant of taking dominion over our lives, which is, I'm assuming each and every one of us here would want to be on board with that you're more interested in the truth that is going to liberate you than into some sort of false idea of temporal satiation. Temporal satiation would be, similar. You've heard me use this example before. Like, I just think it's a really good way to explain how, like, when your body is craving something, if you don't understand the language of your body, we want to understand the language of God as our body. If my body is craving protein, a lot of people say, oh, I'm craving protein. I'm going to get a bacon cheeseburger because that's going to satiate my protein. That's not an authentic, benevolent way to satiate. A benevolent way to divinely satiate your body is to give it pure, natural, organic, magnificent food that is going to come through you without any byproducts or toxins that your body's like, okay, like, here comes the cheeseburger and the bacon, oh my God, your stomach's like, oh my God, and there's all this stuff that it has to like go, oh, get rid of this, this is all bad, because we remember that our bodies, our emotions, and our minds are in a constant state of homeostatic good that are always trying to get toxins out. But it takes energy to get toxins out. And so if I'm using a whole bunch of energy over here to do this, what about the other? I need to take, here's this measly little piece of protein that I need for the rest of my body, which is getting used up to get rid of all of this toxins. And we don't want to do that. We want to allow ourselves to move into a place where we're open to that beautiful cooperation, divine cooperation within our own beingness. And so one of the intentions we want to have is that we want to seek and find the absolute truth, the capital T truth in any given situation about anything and everyone, because that's the one that brings you divine satiation. That's the one that's going to make you go, okay, I'm fulfilled. I got the divine nutrition I need in my bones and in my body. For years, when I first, a lot of you know that I do a divine energy medicine where I work with, it's prayer that's living and it's moving and it's breathing. It's just a way to take prayer. And so in the early days, I did work in a cancer support center, and I was working with, every week I would go in and the cancer support, people are very open to alternative healings and things like that, and there would be a list of people that would be there, and we'd go through, and it became very, very telling what I learned in there, that there are many different ways. There are many different ways to heal, and there were a significant amount of people that they healed in what I guess a lot of people would call triumphing over, working with a disease like cancer or some other diseases that we also have that can seem daunting. Even some of the mild ones that we just, we kind of allow them to just continue. There are certain ones where there are certain ailments that we can have where we just like, okay, let's just take some drugs where we just let it stay there, but we're not really interested in cleaning it out. And anyway, there were certain people that they came in and they wanted to be bold. They wanted to be bold and they wanted to make the right choices and then be in connection with truth and connect with the divine and allow something to reveal itself. Because we know that when we come before the altar of the Almighty, anything is possible. In God, all things are possible. There are no caveats to that. The only caveat would be how we choose to address that. And when you do address it, when you do say, I'm going to come before the altar of the Almighty and I'm going to surrender my ego's version of what I think is right or wrong and open up to a truth that is going to humble me, and you want to be humbled. Humbling is like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's so empowering. It sometimes seems, it's like when we speak about the meek in Scripture, the meek are the ones that are able to say, you know what? man, I thought I had it all, and I'm using all my willpower to do stuff. Because, there's willpower that can get you through stuff. But when willpower moves over to divine will, and I'm in alignment where I'm unmoved by the calamities, then you're really cooking with gas. And so we want to open to that. And so we got to the point in the adventure, and I said, you know what? I always counsel anybody who's going through that, if it's cancer or any other ailment with finances or anything. It's like, okay, first of all, we're not going to make it bad, wrong, or the enemy. Like Mother Teresa said, I'm not going to go to fight against war. I will go to a celebration of peace. And so we want to embrace where it's like, we're not going to make anything bad. We're going to love it. When you think of what cancer is, it is cells in the body that have gone rogue. They become independent. They become separate from the whole. And they want to be loved. They want to be brought back into the fold. They want to be turned on back to the perfect blueprint of homeostatic wellness. And so I said, okay, are you ready for the adventure? First of all, we're not going to fight it. We're not going to fight it. We're going to love it to the ends of the earth. We're going to love it, and we're going to seek and find the answer to this. We're going to seek and find, and lo and behold, she triumphed. And we had to look at everything, all the other pieces of the equation with the relationship and the career to see what wanted to birth itself. I had another person at the Cancer Support Center. She did not want to live. She was like, every time we get together and we do our prayer and our energy, I feel angels, I feel grace, and I want to cross over. That was what she wanted. She wanted to do that. So we cultivated that field. It's like, okay, let's cultivate that field, because I will tell you, there are civilizations, indigenous tribes around the world, where crossing over isn't a scary thing. It's not something that we run and scream from. It's a celebration. It's a transformation, because we know in our true teachings that life is eternal. It is eternal. We go from life to life. When we leave here, we're going to move on. Our spirit will just soar. It'll soar and open into this magnificence. So she chose that route, and it kind of caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that, because there's a lot of energy around, well, what is healing? Healing means that in these situations, it's got to look like this. And I was like, all right, well, she wanted peace, grace, beauty, love in a different way. So we did that. We worked through it. And when she crossed, there wasn't an ounce of fear in her body. She was in bliss, in absolute bliss. So it's a little bit of a paradox. It might sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm not, because the only thing I'm talking about is the truth. There's a million different ways to realize the truth. And if you have things in you that you want to sing into the world and express into the world, then we want to cultivate that. We want to be bold, and being bold to behold. When you behold something, you are in awe. You are in awe. And all throughout Scripture, there's behold this, behold that, because when you behold it, you have succumbed to the energy of the presence, and you feel it tingling in your bones. And when you feel the presence tingling in your bones, which is you, it's your own magnificence, when you feel that, you're in awe, and you start to tap into the mysteries, the mystical teachings. And it's like, and wisdom will come. Wisdom comes, it downloads, it's a byproduct, it's a side effect that comes through when you get the wisdom teachings through surrender. And all of us are seeking surrender. Some people, we have to tap into that word, because for some people, remember, everything in the human experience is predicated on your beliefs and your definitions. It's a two-way street. Your definitions feed your beliefs feed your definitions, and you are at the mercy of your beliefs and your definitions. And so we want to know, when it comes to surrender, what's my definition of surrender? Does that mean I'm throwing in the towel? No, surrender means I come before the altar of the Almighty to be empowered with a divine strength that allows me to be there for everything and everyone. Most notably, we to be there for ourselves. Generally, we start here. We start here in our own beingness, and we check in with our own world, and coming back to the life structures of finances, health and well-being, relationships, career, artistic expression. These are some of the structures. The main structures, there's like the main structures, and there's some substructures, which we're going to go over in the prayer class in depth. That's the whole point of praying on purpose, because there are plenty of people that are using prayer against themselves. And we don't want to do that, because using prayer against yourself, or intending against yourself, or affirming against yourself is just a recipe for like going, oh, geez, another day where I've stubbed my toe, and it's like, we don't want that. We want to be thriving in the light, and that it's more important to have a revelation of a truth in our beingness than anything else, and to seek and find that truth, and to not get sucked in by the group consciousness that is out there that is going to say, oh, well, this is the way, and that is the way. If you have a desire within you that wants to be fulfilled, I would say, A, we're going to start with benevolent satiation and divine fulfillment, and that the truth is more important than anything else. I don't want to make, it's like, Reverend Michael used to, he used as an example one time. It's like, okay, I can get myself into a psyched up, use willpower and try to coerce the laws of attraction. And I can say, okay, when I'm eating this brownie that's filled with sugar and preservatives, that it's going to go into my body and it's going to be good. It's going to give me nourishment, and it's going to come into my veins and blood, and it's going to circulate as goodness. Or I can eat some really healthy greens like broccoli and spinach, and I can allow what nature has already taken care of and let it do good. So I could either say and use willpower and say, okay, I'm going to and it's achievable, but it's going against the laws of nature, because nature has energy coded into things already. So if I don't like spinach and broccoli, well then maybe instead I'll use a little bit less energy and go like, you know what? I'm going to love broccoli and spinach. I'm going to love what's good for me that's already natural. And I'll tell you, the reason people do juice cleanses and things like that is because, just like in the world of effects, we've all heard the expression, you get comfortable in your discomfort. You let that relationship repeat its cycle over and over. They do this, then you get mad, then they get mad, and then you pound it out, and then you go to your corners, and then you let the dust settle, and then a week later we do it all over again. No, we don't want to do that. We want to go ahead and we want to open up into a space where divine cooperation is at hand. And so that takes being bold. That says, I'm not going to settle for mediocrity. I'm going to settle for excellence. I'm going to settle for what my soul ultimately is going to have anyway, because the big cosmic joke is, you will reach enlightenment. You will attain mastery no matter what. Whether you enjoy it, that's up to you, because we want to enjoy the process. And so when we do our affirmations, sometimes, today we did our affirmations. We have a couple more we're going to do. When we do our affirmations, sometimes people are just like, oh yes, God is my infinite source, and it's kind of like, it's just kind of floating around the surface mind. It hasn't reached prayer energy. When an affirmation hits the prayer field and you are available to embody it, you will see the change immediately and immaculately. And remember, when the answered prayer matriculates down into time and space, because this is where we are, we're in time and space, it's going to take a minute. It might take a day, it might take a minute, it might take an hour. If you're clean, it's going to happen like that. It's going to be like that. And so we keep praying, and prayer is a way of life. It's like, it's not a thing I do when calamity hits. It's what I do ceaselessly. We want our word, our every thought, our every word, our every deed to express prayerfully. It is dynamic, it is magnificent. So we're gonna go ahead. One other thing. I used to be very active when you're a practitioner at Agape, or a lot of the new thought centers around the globe. There are prayer ministries, and I spent many, many hours on the phones answering the phone when people would call in for prayer. And you want to know that about 95% of the calls that come into prayer ministries come from people who are in need of something. I lost my job, my health went south, my relationship is this or whatever. They wait until something happens before, I would say probably 5% were people who called and said, I'm in such awe of the grace and the beauty and the glory of God that happened today. I just want to celebrate in gratitude. Could we just pray a prayer of gratitude? I want to charge everyone here. If you want to spiral good out of control in your life, prayers of gratitude for what's going on is amazing. It's amazing. I would say, in our prayer class, the last one we had people that called the Agape prayer line, the Unity prayer line, the World Ministry of Prayer.